Do you believe you're misdiagnosed, or are you searching for a diagnosis for ADHD and you're feeling lost? This episode is for you. Welcome to Beyond Meds. We're unlocking ADHD management without medication, optimizing physical health, harnessing mindfulness, and biohacking for a med-free life. It's time to take a holistic approach and treat the whole person, not just the symptom. If you've been misdiagnosed with ADHD or undiagnosed and searching for that ADHD diagnosis, this episode is for you. We're going to be diving into what an ADHD diagnosis gives you, what that label, means, the good and the bad. And we're going to help you navigate, if you've been misdiagnosed, that grieving process, that feeling lost, and can be very painful with a lot of shame coming up for you. We're going to show you how to navigate that, some next steps forward. And if you are searching for a diagnosis, or the doctor said you don't have ADHD, but you really resonate with it, how to navigate that with this feeling lost of not sure how to move forward if you feel like you're really struggling right now. Sit back and relax, and also grab a journal or notebook and pen, because we're going to be giving you questions throughout this episode that we want you to actually pause the episode and journal or ponder on. They're going to very much be your guiding light forward on how to move past or move through either a misdiagnosis or an undiagnosis of ADHD. Let's dive in. So what does a diagnosis give you? Why even get it? Well, it gives you access to medication, as we know, and it has you classified as a disability, at least in the US, which can give you access to therapy, psychiatric help, accommodations at work or school, or even if you're interviewing for a job. And it can get you that understanding from others, where you may show up late for an appointment and they're like, oh, we understand it's ADHD, no big deal, right? And that can feel really relieving for us with ADHD. Now, often the people who seek a diagnosis, you may recognize yourself in this if you've gone through this, is maybe you just graduated university, you're starting a job, and you just can't keep up with the workload. Or maybe you're going to university and you're like, the studying is too much. I can't retain the information. I can't stay focused. It's just too much for me to handle. Or maybe you're leaving a job after 30 years and you literally had a mental breakdown. You're like, I don't know even how I did this, but I can't do it anymore. And really, I need to move to a countryside and start a homestead. Or we have the new mother and, managing, a baby now, a household, and just can't keep up at home. And maybe if she's going back into the workplace of now managing a family and work and her own personal commitments. And then, of course, we know the inattentive or hyperactive young child getting diagnosed because they can't sit still in school or is daydreaming looking out the window. And we see this as faults. So this needs to be looked at, because what is put in place in society, with even in a school system, in the job, in the workforce, or at least that specific industry, at home, those standards you hold for yourself or others hold for you, you're not meeting them. So there must be something to look at here. There must be something wrong. And then we search for the diagnosis to get an understanding. So this is already segueing into the other side of a diagnosis. An ADHD diagnosis is a label. And a label is a way to categorize something in contrast to another. And that's the definition I've given it. If we look at the definition, I have two different definitions here from the dictionary, Merriam-Webster. The first one is a descriptive or identifying word or phrase, is what a label is. The other definition I found was a classifying phrase or name applied to a person or thing, especially one that is inaccurate or restrictive. And I love those last two words there, inaccurate or restrictive, because, and I'm thinking of my own journey, and of course the journeys I hear from friends and acquaintances who have ADHD, is we search for this diagnosis to get some sort of understanding so we can identify ourselves, right? It's an identifying word or phrase. That's what a label is. But often, at least what I've seen, especially in my own life, is it's restrictive. All of a sudden, everything we thought was perhaps wrong with us, or maybe even the good things that, our creativity, to be able to multitask, to start multiple projects at once, to focus deeply on something for hours and hours and hours. We now see this as restrictive because it's all ADHD and it is a disability and it is a fault. And that other word in the definition is it's inaccurate. And I love that because when we put a label on something, and think of this, I love analogies. I know we all do here. Think of putting a whole bunch of objects from your home in a house and adding a label to it. It's my random box of things. So we're categorizing it with a label, putting all these different things in the box. But they're all different things. They don't really have any similarities except for the fact that they're all random. So the label we've given it's kind of inaccurate. We're putting the box because we assume there's similarities to them, but there really isn't. It's not a box of shoes. It's not a box of clothes. It's not a box of letters. It is just a box of random things. And that's what I see when we use the ADHD label. We're slapping on this label, misdiagnosis, and saying that everyone who has it, this is a very big generalization, but stick with me, everyone who has it, it looks like this. This is what's wrong with them. These are symptoms. This is how they're going to operate in the world best. This is how they're going to struggle to operate in the world. And it's very inaccurate. And that was, like I said, a very big generalization because I am going to elaborate more to this. But often when we receive the diagnosis, that's how we see ourselves. Like, I have ADHD. Everything now in my life makes sense. And this is who I am. Aside from the aforementioned, a diagnosis gives us a knowing and certainty. Because if you are diagnosed with ADHD, you're like, oh, it all makes sense. My life makes sense. I now know how to get work done at work. I know I need to work in different ways. You maybe have power hours that are good for you to focus and you take lots of breaks. Maybe you do get medication to help you complete your daily tasks and stay on task and not procrastinate. Or you need an accountability buddy so you don't procrastinate. Or your morning routine is going to be so important to setting you up for the day. There's all these different things that you're like, you get clarity on when you get a diagnosis. And again, generalization, but that's generally the change process through receiving the diagnosis. And when we have a knowing and certainty, we're like, I now know how to proceed at work. I now know how to get things done at home. Maybe I have certain organization systems. I'm hiring a cleaner, or maybe it is just rely on medication for a lot of people. Knowing and certainty takes away the fear. Without knowing, without certainty, there's fear. We look for the diagnosis. We want the diagnosis to take away the fear. And what is the fear? I mean, this can be different for everyone, but often it's this shame or shadow, both, because you can never show up on time. You can't get your work done, but all your coworkers can finish a day's work and they're not exhausted, but you, for some reason, just can't stay focused long enough to get the simplest things done. What's wrong with you? Why can't you do that? Or maybe it's that you have these big emotional outbursts and you're like, why is everyone else being able to keep calm and handle the stress, handle the anxiety? Why do I feel this intense anxiety and then anger and then just complete numbness and then complete lack of social interaction? What's wrong with me that I can't operate like everyone else around me that I see? And then there's so much shadow to explore there, and shadow being something we've repressed, we've stuffed away in a deep dark cave because at one point in time or multiple points in time as we were growing up or as just a little kid, we were told that that is bad, that you are not loved, you're not accepted if you are enter whatever shadow aspect, if you're late, if you don't get everything, all your tasks done, because then you're lazy, or if you don't know a certain thing, you're stupid. And we put this aside into our shadow. And at some point that can create shame if we realize that my worth as a human is attached to that. that this is so bad, if I let anyone see this, if anyone finds out that I'm lazy because I think I'm lazy because I can't keep up with all the daily work tasks plus additional projects I'm getting in my job, if anyone finds out that I'm lazy and stupid and can't keep up, there's this intense shame that's attached to your inherent worth that you're like, I'm not even worthy as a human. So if you feel that, and then you get a diagnosis saying, oh, it's actually ADHD, that's why you can't get stuff done, that's why it's hard to focus, that's why you're always late for work, that's why it's hard to retain information, it doesn't liberate you from the shame and shadow. It actually just stuffs it down even more. Because before it was this fear of, what if someone finds out about this? And now with a knowing and certainty, that takes away fear. It's like, oh, I have ADHD. It's totally fine. It gives me permission to continue maybe showing up in this way, maybe not, but gives you an understanding. It gives you that assurance, but not in a healthy way. And this is where I see majority of folks who get diagnosed and have this label. I went through this myself. It's you're struggling, you get this diagnosis, you're like, oh my God, this understanding, maybe this permission to show up as I am, or maybe not. Maybe there's a lot of grief and remorse of like, why didn't I get this diagnosis sooner? But then grief often fall into this victimhood of, oh, it's my ADHD, I won't be able to do that. Oh, my ADHD causes this. It's using it as a crutch or an excuse, if you will. And even if we don't feel we're in the victim mentality, we're never fully facing that shadow and shame we stuffed away, and we're just placing it on the ADHD and lumping it together. I'm going to give another example to explain this. Maybe when you're younger, you're told that if you don't pick up your toys, you are lazy. And being lazy is terrible. It's a bad thing, right? It was used in a negative context. Like, you are lazy because you didn't pick up your toys, or you didn't finish your homework last night. You are so lazy. And as a kid, that's like little T trauma. That's a stress because you're like, oh my God, I'm a bad person because I didn't finish my homework and didn't pick my toys, and being lazy is bad. Fast forward to today, you're at work and you didn't get yesterday's daily tasks done that most employees or your coworkers get done in a day, and you're like, I'm so lazy. This is terrible. How am I even here? How am I even keeping this job? And then you find out you have ADHD, and that's been preventing you from completing the tasks in a timely manner. Like, great. I'm not lazy, it's just ADHD. The shadow is the lazy aspect because we deem that bad. And we hold that and can create shame in ourselves. And when we just push that over to ADHD, we're just putting ADHD, we're just giving a label to the shadow we don't want to face. So you're not free from that shadow. We've just labeled it as ADHD, and we continue on saying, I'll take medication, or I'll make an excuse, or I'll kind of use it as a crutch to not feel bad about myself, because to really look at myself as lazy and face that is painful and hard and terrifying. Now, I don't want this episode to be all about shadow, but the way we move through shadow and to liberate ourselves from it is to face it, is to shine the light on it, to look at it as, wow, I'm calling myself lazy, I feel lazy, but hey, that's not a bad thing. It was just used in a negative connotation, but lazy can actually be a great thing to help me have rest, to help know where my priorities are, where my time management should go. It's helped me rejuvenate after a long week, to feel okay with not doing much. When we receive that diagnosis, the label of ADHD, it puts us in the ADHD box. And in that box, we put all our shadow. We just lump it all with ADHD, and it's a way we avoid facing it and actually growing and moving forward and moving past it. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I'm going to give you some prompts, some questions to ponder and journal on, whether you are undiagnosed, searching for a diagnosis, or misdiagnosed. And this is going to help you move forward. So you can pause this and ponder on these now, or you can just note the time step and come back to it. So if you're undiagnosed and searching for the diagnosis, I want you to ask yourself, why do you want the diagnosis? What would that help you with? So maybe what it help you with is like, I am feeling overwhelmed at work, feeling very anxious because I procrastinate on my work in general, and I just can't keep up, and I keep getting called out that I'm not finishing my work and I'm missing a lot of details. So the next question would be, with what you need help with, so the example I just gave, what labels are you attaching to that? Maybe you're attaching labels of, I'm lazy, I can't keep up, it means I'm a bad person, I'm stupid because I can't focus long enough, I'm emotionally unstable because I'm always anxious. Search for the words of what's beneath the thing you need help with. Now, if you're misdiagnosed, I want you to ask yourself these questions. What did the diagnosis originally give me permission for as a human, or liberate me from? So we use that previous example, and you're like, oh, I thought I was lazy and stupid and emotionally unstable. Actually, it's ADHD. I'm totally normal. This is totally fine. So get clear on that first, because then I want you to ask yourself, why did I deem this as bad or a fault? Why did I think being lazy or stupid or emotionally unstable is a fault of mine? And with that, I want you to find the positive side, the positive connotations of that. How has lazy helped you in life? How has seemingly being stupid helped you in life? How has seemingly being emotionally unstable helped you? Because those are just the negative connotations of something that's completely human and has positive and negative qualities to it. You know, what we call emotionally unstable could mean that you feel emotions fully, and as humans, that's kind of what we're here to do, and is a beautiful gift we have. I always get asked, what did I do to minimize my ADHD symptoms to virtually nothing? How do I manage med-free? And although there are many contributing factors, which I teach on this podcast, there is one that stands out, which has made the greatest impact in managing my ADHD, along with contributing to me just being able to trust the flow of life more and being more at ease with it. And that is my daily self-hypnosis work, where I reprogram my subconscious mind to create new neural pathways. These new neural pathways support the life I want to create and have. I do this with the help and guidance of the 2E Magnetic program and app. The 2E Magnetic program guides me through these self-hypnosis tracks to work through, heal, and reprogram whatever I want to focus on, such as money and spending habits, health and body image, getting past procrastination, taking intentional versus impulsive action, and some of my other favorites, doing deep inner child and shadow work, both which have resulted in deep inner healing that have contributed to a decrease in my ADHD symptoms. Best part, it's at the fraction of a cost of typical hypnosis sessions, and I can do it in the comfort and safety of my own bedroom. Hands down, this is the best membership I've ever joined. And honestly, I tell everyone I know about on how impactful it's been for me, and that I know will be for them as well. So I'm excited to offer you, as a listener of Beyond Meds, a 15% off discount on the membership. Just use the link below and you can sign up either on a payment plan or pay in full with that 15% off. Again, that's 15% off their membership to do self-hypnosis work and reprogram your subconscious mind to have the life that you desire. I want to explore now the effect of society and social norms on ADHD diagnoses. I read an article in the New York Times that was published about 10 years ago, and they were also exploring this concept on how society has changed. We know that. You know, how our school system's set up, how the modern workplace is set up, even now with social media and smartphones and the rush to do more of this busyness, and how that correlates to perhaps more ADHD diagnoses. Now, there's tons of variables that come into play to receive a diagnosis, so this is just one of them. But look at just our school system today, where even long ago, if anything today, maybe it's a bit better, but our school system in general, where kids are seated for a long period of time, maybe 15 minutes twice a day to go out for recess to run around and play, maybe a lunch break they're outside, maybe not. And if you live in a place with poor weather, maybe those recess breaks are actually held indoors where the children are seated, they're playing a game quietly versus running around expending energy. As a child, running around, expending energy, having imagination, playing make-believe is healthy and normal and perfect. So if you see a kid that can't sit still in class, that's the comment, they must have ADHD. Is that true? Or are they just being a kid? But because of how we forced children to sit still, listen, pay attention, you must learn this perhaps very boring information that's maybe not applicable to them now or in their life, maybe some of it is, that no wonder they don't want to sit there. They're being a kid. And so that's just one simple example. But the workplace is something that I laugh at a lot. Because if you're someone with ADHD, it's not typically set up for you very well. But if you think of it in a very general sense, that pre-COVID times where more people worked in office versus at home, but you go to this large building, perhaps you commute an hour, multiple hours to a central location downtown, there's tons of office buildings, and you sit there in a chair, not much movement, under fluorescent lights. They're destroying your eyes, looking at a blue lit screen, maybe multiple screens, cramped in an awkward position, so the ergonomics are probably not ideal. We're meant to move as humans and not be stuck in one spot. And you need to sit there and do 8 hours of work. That's the expectation. And you should be able to focus for all of it. You'll take maybe a lunch break, maybe some coffee breaks, which will also probably be seated inside. So no connection with nature, no grounding into the earth, no fresh air, more just fluorescent lights, probably maybe even looking at your phone, more screens. The conversations you have with coworkers are usually pretty shallow, talking about the weather, your weekend, maybe some complaints. So we're often not going to deeper conversational state or really using our brain for some deeper work or deeper conversation. And we repeat that 5 days a week and for maybe 30 plus years. So if you're someone who's like, I can't focus for that long, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I think that's just normal, and that we've put ourselves in a box of this is what it must look like to be a productive human in society, or to hold a job in this way or in that type of setting is you must sit at a computer and focus for 8 hours. And COVID, I believe, in my viewpoint, helped us see that there's a different way to get the work done in a day. Working from home, having your own setup, working more flexible hours. But society has said this is what you must do and assimilate to. This is how you must show up to be a productive, successful, contributing part of society. And if you can't do that, then there must be something wrong with you, and we're gonna put you in a different box. And this is how society has affected a lot of what I see as diagnoses. Because if you can't do this, there's something wrong with you. And this goes back to the shame and shadow, I guess, conversation we had earlier in this episode of if you're not doing an 8-hour workday, you're not productive, you're lazy, you're not successful, you're not contributing to society or contributing to moving the company or your work forward. And we look at that such a bad thing, and it's not. It's just a label that was given to it. And not just the workplace, but we think of life. If you're, say you're a stay-at-home parent or you work a non-traditional job, but just the busyness of life that, you must work, say 40 hours a week or 30 to 40 hours a week or more. Keep a tidy home. If you have a family or pets, it's like taking good care of them, taking your kids to sports, to hobbies, making sure you have hobbies and you also stay fit. Also make sure you meditate and have a morning routine and a night routine and you socialize with friends. And there's just so much in our lives that we feel we must do to, again, be an adequate human and to progress in life and to live a successful life. And then let's throw in smartphones and tablets and how they're designed to pull us in and make us addicted. So any downtime we may have, we're just numbing ourselves and looking at screens even more. And that's a whole other topic, but there's this constant busyness, need to do more, and the need to do more, and the feeling that it's never enough what we do, and the thirst that if I just do more, I'll feel accomplished. If I just do more, people will be proud of me. If I just do more, I'll finally get to XYZ goal. And if I can't keep up, if I can't do that, if I'm falling behind, that means something's wrong with me. And if something's wrong with me, I have to look into this because this isn't acceptable by society. So enter the worker who's been 30 years at their job and had a mental breakdown because they finally just can't do it anymore. Or the new mother who can't keep up at home and taking care of her child while her spouse is away at work during the day. There must be something wrong. Or the university student that can't focus in class and then sit for hours and hours and hours and study. Or the recent graduate who's finally in the workforce, but the 10-hour days that must be productive and the 6-day work weeks are too much and can't keep up. So there must be something wrong. Right? We go back to those examples because that's often what I hear of what triggered the search for a diagnosis. I couldn't keep up. I couldn't do it this way, and everyone else could, at least what we see. So there must be something wrong. And as I say that, the funny thing is, I meet a lot of people who have ADHD. I feel like every second person I meet has ADHD. I think the stat is maybe like 1 in 20 in the States or in North America. Feels so much higher in my own life, what I experience, but is everyone thinks they can't keep up and they're not doing what they should be doing, what is normal. But what is normal if not everyone, but the majority of us are feeling that way, or everyone who's neurodivergent is feeling that way? Maybe what we've created as normal in society is normal for some, but not everyone. I just think of this example in my head of you can't keep up with your coworkers, you can't get your work done, and so you get an ADHD diagnosis. But maybe the other 5 coworkers are thinking exactly the same, are also searching for the diagnosis. So who's right? This society we've created, the standard we've created to live by, who created it, and why are we all upholding it if a lot of us feel like it's unattainable? With all of that being said, even though society has created the standard that we live by, and you're like, okay, I get it, but I still need to complete my job. I still maybe want to promote. I still need to complete university. I still need to be a decent parent to raise my child and keep them safe, right? We still need to live by the rules that we have created in society because that's what they are right now. But I call this breaking the trance of society, where yes, we can still show up and live by those rules and meet the standards of what we find acceptable. But it's when we do it unknowingly, when we're like, this is what's 100% absolute truth. And if I can't meet this, I'm not good enough. And we go into this not enoughness, low self-worth state. That's when we fall into the trance. When we understand that this is just standards that are made up over time, that as a society, a collective, we uphold, and that you yourself are not broken and you're inherently worthy, and the things that you feel bad about, that you label yourself and judge yourself for, is just this shadow that was picked up from childhood, something that you can work through or start to understand. Once you can, even if you don't know how to take action right now, just understanding that and seeing that is like breaking the trance. And this is what I find the most liberating. Whether you're diagnosed with ADHD or not, taking medication or not, or feel like I'm still effing failing at life right now. But if we can see that, okay, this is just some standards that were created over time. There's nothing inherently wrong with me. This is just maybe how my brain developed, my experiences in childhood, and stuff that feels really hard and heavy, and I don't know how to move through it, but at least I have some awareness about it. We're breaking the trance. And that is literally the first step in what I'm going into next, of how to start to live your life again by your own rules, even if society has ones that are probably going to stay for a while. When I started looking into human design this year, and I have a whole podcast episode on that, which I'll link in the show notes, that gave me the greatest permission to show up who I am without a label, without this ADHD label, and help me understand who I am, my traits, my personality, and also help me work through a lot of that shadow of, I'm not lazy. Actually, this is a good thing because this is just a gift I have. But it was looked at through a negative lens, right? Thought I was lazy. I was actually just in a rest period because I needed the energy in a week's time, a couple months' time, to create really great things in the world, to start some really amazing projects that were going to be impactful for someone. So I wasn't being lazy. I was just conserving my energy for when I needed it. So human design is something that is just all encompassing. That's why I love it. It's not just personality. It's not just your purpose on earth. It just encompasses everything about you, all the nuances as well. And I also look to astrology as well for that, because both of those show you as who you are, you're a unique human being, versus a label like ADHD. You may resonate with that diagnosis, but you're still a unique individual like no one else on this planet. And both of those tools really highlight that. I'm not as familiar with Myers-Briggs, but I know a lot of folks find value in that too. Any tool is going to give you that reassurance of who you are at your core level, the assurance and permission to show up like yourself, even as you work through layers of shadow and silent programming. And that, I feel, is the first step once you have the awareness, is to move into who am I? So you can start to give yourself permission to operate as who you truly are, even if societal norms and social norms don't always agree. So I'll give a quick example here just for some context. But if we looked at human design, say your friend's a generator and you're a manifesting generator. So a generator is someone who typically an 8 to 5 job or 9 to 5 job is great. They feel so satisfied by doing a day's work, and they replenish their energy overnight. They can generally focus for long periods of time, and they like being guided and directed, and they can do the work. They love that, as long as the work lights them up. So say that's your friend and they work a 9 to 5 job and they're thriving. Maybe they have ADHD, maybe they don't. And let's say you're a manifesting generator, someone who loves to have multiple things on the go, lots of energy, but not just targeted to one thing. Like I said, multiple projects. Can't really do that 9 to 5 in front of a computer. Often maybe as an entrepreneur is excited to start one project, then another project, and launching different events and services. But let's say you're trying to have that 9 to 5 desk job and you just can't do it. So you think, there's something wrong with me. Maybe it's ADHD, because a lot of these things sound like ADHD. I'm jumping all over the place. I can't focus for long periods of time, tons of energy. And whether you have it or not, maybe you look at human design, you're like, oh, this is actually who I am at a core level. It's how I'm designed. And what works best for me is to be in an environment I can have lots of projects on the go. Is maybe working remotely or at home, or setting up a different workspace so I can physically move around, or set my hours so when I have a creative burst, I can go after it. It gives you the permission to be like, there's actually nothing wrong with me. When you understand who you are at a core level and how you operate, you can then get creative of showing up like that in your regular life, even within the constraints of your workplace or of society. So I'm going to transition to some questions for you to journal and ponder on and help you move forward on this. If you're undiagnosed and searching for the diagnosis, I want you to ask yourself, what is it that I'm searching the diagnosis for? What is it that I'm struggling with, I need help with? And is that thing for myself or society? For example, if you're like the previous example, you can't get stuff done at work and you're feeling lazy, or you're telling yourself you're lazy, are you needing the diagnosis to be like, I need some medication or resources because I must do my job because it's fueled by this drive for success. Once I can do this job or promote to this level, then I'll finally be successful. I'll finally get that certain amount of money every year. I'll finally make my parents proud. Or is it because you're like, I love what I do so passionately. You know, it's fueled by love. I'm fulfilled by it. And I want to continue to put this good work into the world because it helps me, it helps others. Fueled by this place of love versus fear and ego. And by understanding myself and how ADHD works, I can better do that job. Are you doing it for you, or is it for society? And then for you means from a loving, compassionate place, or is it for society, meaning it's for someone else? It's driven by ego and fear. And if you're misdiagnosed, and you're trying to find your footing again after realizing you don't have ADHD. I want you to ask yourself, what have I come to learn is true or been told from society that is making? The second question, if I was the only one on earth and no societal standards or programming existed, what is the opposite, the positives you would tell yourself? So maybe you've been told that being lazy is a bad thing because you didn't complete your work. But none of that existed. The opposite would be I'm resting and conserving my energy to produce something even greater in a week's time. And a question I'm going to pose to both groups, if you're undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, or maybe you're in between those two, you're diagnosed and it feels right for you. If everything in the world just melted away and you were the only one here, so no societal standards, no societal programming because no one else exists, you're the only one, what would be your ideal way to show up in a day? Like, how would your day look? How would you operate? How would you live your life in a way that works with your energy, works with your mind, works with your likes and dislikes, works with your quirks and habits? Like, the ideal day, what would that look like? It's like thinking of a life where the struggles of ADHD don't exist. You're still you. Everything you are today is still true, but we're not looking at it through a lens of struggles, but rather what would feel easeful for you to show up in a day. Really think on that one. Even take some time to visualize it, and also make some notes for writing it down to come back to, because that's starting to get back to who you are at a core. And if you know your human design and or astrology, even better, so you can have an idea of what that looks like. But even if you don't, you'll naturally come back to that because it's who you are. It's who you're designed to be. It's everything about you, which you already know. And when you ask yourself this question, it's taking away all the constraints that, society and the world, your regular day or routines has put on you, and be like, okay, if I didn't have to sit at a computer for 8 hours a day and attempt to focus on something I'm not super excited about, what would I do? What would my day look like? What would I create or not create? How would I spend my energy? Would I invite other people into this life, into this day? What types of things would light me up? What kind of gifts or talents would I want to use? What's the energetic mood I would go through my day with? Would it be joyful, very kid-like, very creative, deep and focused, investigative? Understanding what the ideal day looks like is such a beautiful way to move forward in realizing that a society has a huge impact on how your current day is, on how you show up in your day and the things you find are a struggle. And though we maybe can't change all of that, understanding who you are and how you show up and can interact with the standards and constraints that are there can actually be very liberating and can be a very successful way in managing, as we'll say, quote unquote, managing ADHD and really thriving in your day and in your life. I'm going to leave you with that. Remember, diagnosis or not, there's nothing inherently wrong with you. It's a label, which can give us access to some great things. Like I said at the beginning, accommodations in the workplace, medication if that's your choice, and what you need. But without the diagnosis, nothing changes. Nothing's worse about you or better about you. But it's just how we perceived it and how society has started to add a label to it. So go through these questions I posed for you today and take your time through them. If you have questions, we would love to hear it. You can email us at adhdwellnessco@gmail.com. We'll also be in the show notes. We love creating this content for you, and we would love it even more if you could subscribe, download, and leave a 5-star rating for the podcast. It helps us reach more ADHDers like yourself who are looking for a med-free way to manage their ADHD through biohacking. Now, if this episode didn't resonate, stay tuned for our future ones because we know there's something in there for you. But if this resonated for you, or you think a friend might love it, please send it their way. And of course, any questions, you can email them off to us.